Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Kate, what's interesting is that not only did you decide to go into the fantastic yet stressful world of consulting, you also decided to put on another challenge, which is the creative industry specifically. So tell us, what's the story here?
Okay, I don't think there was necessarily a specific decision to do that. I think it's actually been quite an organic journey for me. So I've always had a deep interest in people. My first job, a long time ago, 1989, so a long time ago, was in recruitment. And I kind of fell into recruitment. It wasn't something that I intended to go into. In fact, what I really wanted to do was to act and to write. And it was a bit of a surprise to me that I found recruitment enjoyable. And I kind of worked out exactly what that was. And it was that connection with people. And, you know, I was 17 when I started out. I didn't go down the higher education route. For me, that just wasn't an option. So there I was, this very energetic, curious, chattery teenager working with professionals with decades of experience who were looking to change jobs or needed career advice. And, you know, this was the 1990s, right? So, you know, kind of, yeah, you can imagine that the landscape was very different. And there was the odd exec who felt that I didn't have the experience or the gravitas to understand their motivators or to have the capability perhaps to support them into work. But what happened over the course of kind of a year, 18 months, was that I proved to myself and to them that I was actually very good at it. And my reputation grew quite quickly. So by the time I was 18, I was a senior recruitment agent in a boutique agency. And at the same time, I was pursuing this side hustle in the arts. And I think when you are a creative, it's impossible to ignore that itch, right? It's just impossible to do it for very long. So I was singing, performing or writing, but actually not making very much money at that. Well, maybe I wasn't particularly good at it. Maybe, I don't know. We'll find out at some point. But it did at least scratch that itch while I was doing the other more corporate stuff. And now, of course, you know, sort of fast forward 30 odd years, I've traversed different corporate roles, different opportunities within recruitment, sales, learning and development. And I've built a brand in the creative industries through those roles. And I've been able to galvanize, I think, that experience into who I am today. So I'm so lucky. I really think that I'm very privileged to be able to do what I do.
So there is rarely anybody saying like, oh yeah, my dream since I was a kid was to become a consultant. We fall into this by, I mean, not necessarily accidents, but like, you know, life gets us there. And if we do it right, like you did, you end up doing it for an industry that you particularly like and appreciate, which makes it even better. So I love the background story. Tell us a bit more about what problem you're solving now. What is it that you help people achieve?
Okay, so now my practice started about 7 or 8 years ago. And even over that time, obviously, you know, the last 5 years has been like bonkers, right? It's been totally not what any of us expected. And I think as consultants, certainly, everyone's had to learn to adapt to the changing landscape of the world of work, but also just culture. The global culture has changed around work, and, you know, the political climates are continuing to change, you know, in all sorts of mad ways. So I've had to adapt very quickly, and that doesn't necessarily mean that how I am right now is static. But I suppose if I was to take a snapshot of the way that I'm solving problems today, specifically today, I have to look at this through two lenses, really. So my business and service is directed into two markets. One is distinctively individual. So that's career coaching and support for individuals who are looking to either grow or make a start in in the creative industries, right? So when I'm coaching or providing career clarity, then the core problems tend to be personal blockers to success. So for example, it could be that a highly experienced narrative designer in games is struggling to find work because just the change in the industry, right? As I said, the last 5 years, everything's changing. So the rug's been pulled from beneath them and they don't really know where they're going to go. The competition is incredibly high for the roles that are available. Those roles that are available that used to be in the studio and now no longer in studio, they're freelance, but they've got a mortgage and they've got 4 kids and they've got all of this. So, you know, they're kind of in this position of just being disbalanced. They don't really know where they are. So in that aspect, the problem that I'm solving or how I'm supporting is to help them find alternatives to what has been their usual way of working and what they've typically seen where they fit. So it's kind of like opening up their eyes to other opportunities and other ways of working and other industries sometimes as well. So, you know, it's really just providing them with a bit of strategic insight and realignment on a personal level. Or it could be that I'm providing clarity to groups of recent graduates who have had, I ought to watch what I say here, but some really poor advice on job searching and building industry-ready career collateral. So career collateral is the collective term that we use for anything that helps you get a job, right? So CV, resume, LinkedIn profile, a portfolio, show reel, all of that stuff that helps you to get into a job. And quite often with graduates, they've just had really poor advice, or they've just been focusing on just learning their trade, right? Learning the skill. And then they're kind of thrown out there and expected to find work and they just don't even know where to start. So quite often I'll be delivering clarity on what that looks like and how they should be going about that. And that goes through, you know, kind of the strategic process of understanding who they are, what their brand is, what they stand for, the things that they want, you know, immediately and in the future. So it's a lot more in depth and it's more strategic in terms of my approach there. But a lot of that really is around confidence. I think the biggest issue, the core problem that particular group of stakeholders are facing is this barrier to being able to speak directly to potential employers. They've come from this kind of generational culture where everything is accessible online. You know, if you want to find out how to do a thing, you can go on YouTube and find out. I don't have to, you know, as you did 30 years ago, have to go and find a person and actually speak to them and sit next to them and learn that trade. You know, they can learn things from a distance. And I think actually building up the courage and getting over that intimidation, as it were, of actually going and approaching somebody who might be a potential employer is something that those individuals, you know, have got to learn. That's a skill that just doesn't currently exist. You know, that's kind of where I come in with them. In terms of core problems for organisations, well, that's more around it's still individually focused, right? So it's workforce, and you don't look at the workforce as a group. You look at them as individuals. They're a group of individuals that have all got their own unique values, etc. That they bring to an organisation. So when I'm working with organisations, it's really understanding the barriers to workforce engagement. So what's stopping them from being truly engaged with what it is that the business is looking to do, whether that's a mission or a vision or even their own company values. It's looking at the motivation that keeps them working, that make, you know, so they're performing and being the best professional versions of themselves. What are those things that are holding them back? And I suppose really the big thing is talent attrition or talent retention really as well. So, and you asked about the creative industries earlier, you know, and that nuance with the creative industries, and they do operate in a different way to traditional corporate entities, right? So there's a large freelance workforce. That's one thing. Those people that aren't freelance are usually employed. So this is crew, by the way, not cast, but they're usually employed on fixed term contracts. And that creates a twofold issue, right? So for the organisations, it means that loyalty and motivation from team members can be quite low. A 9-month contract, right, is lovely. It's nice. I've got work for 9 months, but ultimately you still know that in 10 months you're going to be unemployed. So that impacts somebody's motivation, right, because it's short term. So you find crew can be quite fidgety throughout the contract that they've got. So the core problem that these organisations then have, or the production then has, is to ensure that the crew still feel valued and that they feel that they're being justifiably rewarded, even in that short-term frame of time frame, right? So that tends to come from things like continuity of their development. So making sure that there's something, there's a trigger that enables them to continue to grow their professional skills, and that's funded by the organisation. That can be really tricky because the production budgets are lean, right? There should be potential for them when they finish that 9-month contract, for example, to be able to go on, and when they find their next contract, it's not necessarily going to be a rinse and repeat. There's going to be an elevation to the level of skills that they're able to use, the level of responsibility that they might have, their accountability might be different, and of course the pay might be a little bit more, or it might even provide them with the opportunity for a contract renewal in that same business that they're working in, on that same production, or like the golden egg, which everyone's always looking for in the creative industries, which is a permanent job, which hasn't got an end date on it, right? So it's a real myriad of kind of, I won't call them problems. I know you said core problems. I wouldn't call them problems. I would call them challenges, because then they're things that we know that we can overcome, that, as a consultant, that's my job, to get underneath the skin of that and understand what that looks like, so that I can help people to see the way forward. Organisationally, I also help businesses create frameworks. So those pathways to development for individuals are really clear. Any gaps in their skills or capability can be filled then through training and development, which I also help to produce. And I'll do that in collaboration with the organisation. If they've got an internal HR or talent development department, I'll usually do that, and I become part of kind of intrinsic in their business during that development period. And for the workforce, of course, they need those career pathways. They need visibility for the future, because it's tough moving from one gig to another and never truly feeling like you're secure. And that's the truth of it. In the creative industries, the majority of crew never feel secure. They're always looking at the fact that the door is half open and they're going to be out of the exit very soon, right? So that I think is probably covers the majority of the challenges, but there's a whole lot more besides.
So I like it. If we were to summarize this into one clear outcome, Kate, what would that be?
One clear outcome for who?
So the business owners that you help, the companies that you help find alternatives in the way they are usually working, what's the benefit of all that?
I think the benefit for them is to have a framework in place that enables them to understand where demotivation happens, why demotivation happens, to proactively counter those measures, to have triggers in place which provide individuals in the workforce with a sight of the future, but also where those organisations, and this is tricky, right? Because if it was a typical corporate organisation, they'd be able to measure their retention figures, they'd have a balanced scorecard, they'd be able to work their way through that. With creative industry, it's very different, because they're project aligned. Your work is aligned with a project, a specific production. That production may take only a month to produce. It could take 3 years to produce. So it's aligned with those things. So the typical balanced scorecard kind of attrition figures don't really work in that environment. It can be very tricky to do. So it becomes a far more organic process. So there's, I suppose the outcome is that the teams that they have are happy enough that they will provide positive feedback at the end of their contract and said, I had a great time working here, I would work here again. Because ultimately it's short term, right? We want to know that we can keep hiring the best people, but also that those people, whilst they are on production, are the best professional versions of themselves, and they're able to deliver the work that they're hired to deliver within the schedule and the budget of the productions that they've been hired for. was a really rambly answer, wasn't it?
So higher employee satisfaction, higher employee recommendation, more profitable teams. They are more productive.
Absolutely.
They are more satisfied.
Yeah.
Better productivity of the company.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Makes sense. Who is it that you help specifically with those challenges? Like you mentioned, business owners, companies. Do you have like a specific ICP, a specific industry, a specific niche, specific company size? Like who do you decide who you work with and who you help?
That's a really good question, actually, because as a consultant, right, I'm a sole trader. So, you know, and I know a lot of people that are in my position that go, I will help anyone who asks who can pay the bills. Right. And that's the truth of it. A lot of the time, you know, if you've got a gap in your diary and someone comes to you and says, can you help me do this thing? You'll go, well, that's within my scope of capability. Absolutely, I can. Could you pay this? They can. Yeah, let's do it. But I am in a fortunate position where I can be selected with the people that I work with. And those tend to be, so I up until quite recently, up until the middle of last year, was on the Animation Skills Council with Screen Skills, who are the sector skills council for the whole of crew that work within entertainment here in the UK. And I only left because I just don't have the capacity to support them anymore within my diary. But they cover very specifically animation, right? So animation, video games, VFX is kind of like sits within that scope. I also sit on the board of directors for Access VFX, who are a welfare to work, access to work organisation, charity that support people within animation and VFX. So if it's an organisation that sits within that scope, so very specifically, if they're producing movies, if they're producing animation, if they're a marketing or media agency that are producing animated or live action type work, then I'm very happy to get involved. On an individual basis, the skills that I use to support people in terms of career scope and career planning are the same, whether it's somebody who's working on the production line in a Ford factory plant, or whether it's somebody who is, I don't know, a 2D rigger working in Toon Boom Harmony for a preschool kids animation show, right? The skills that I use as a coach are the same, because I'm not the expert in what it is that they do. I'm the expert in what it is that I do, which is posing questions, opening up, you know, kind of the narrative within their own heads to find their way forward. So that doesn't really matter. On an individual basis, I work with pretty much anybody that recognises they need some clarity for the future. But in terms of organisations, I work with indies, I work with large broadcasters, I work with streamers. It's, you know, there's usually some kind of avenue where I will fit within that scope.
Tell me how you help streamers. That's interesting. I mean, we're live streaming this, so apply your magic.
I'm talking streaming. I'm talking the likes of Netflix, right? So
okay, fair enough. I thought the gamers on Twitch, I would have been like, interesting. I myself have fun to stream sometimes. Cool,
well, it's funny you should say that, because before we came on this call, so one of the things that I did this morning, I run a lot of employability programs that run with Access to Work and Welfare to Work organisations. So I come in and deliver the employability factors of those programs. And this morning I just launched a new one with, and I'm sure they won't mind me mentioning them, a Welfare to Work organisation called the Game Academy, and they work specifically with gamers, right? So gamers who are either out of work or have not considered and are now considering a career in video games development, either as an indie designer, developer, etc. And my first session this morning was on personal brand, and it's about, you know, the recognition of who you are, what you bring to the table, what your value proposition statement is, what's the features and benefits of you, and how you should be framing that on the various platforms that you'd be using, obviously, to, you know, project that view of yourself. So it's interesting that you say that, because that's exactly what I was doing this morning for an hour. It was very much a very quick whistle-stop tour of, this is personal brand, this is what you should be doing. So yeah, and I've no doubt that some of them are using Twitch on a regular basis.
It is a small world. Okay, I get it. So I think it's clear, offer, benefits, who we're targeting. I like it because it's also every industry is constantly evolving right now, basically being disrupted with AI. But like streaming, Twitch, gaming is really only around for about a decade. And 10 years ago, very few people were getting paid for doing this. So it's a very interesting niche that you've like positioned yourself into. Tell me how, and you actually just mentioned it, personal branding. How do you market? How do you brand? How do you get the attention of those people, Kate? How do you get leads each and every month?
Now, I said my consultancy have been running my practice for probably for about 7 or 8 years on a full-time basis, and over the last, I would say probably 18 months to 2 years, I don't actively go out and look for leads, just because I don't have the capacity to meet their demands, to be fair, right? My existing clientele and the repeat business that I've got and the recommendations that I get is enough to sustain my practice. I've got enough, if I'm honest. I think outside of that, if I really look at it, I'm fortunate. The projects that I've worked on have been quite high visibility in the sectors that I work within. So, Access VFX and Screen Skills, for example, have really given me a profile that organisations within that sphere, within that ecosystem, recognise that I exist within. So that was me really kind of riding the coattails of other organisations, and that's really helped. I told you I started out in recruitment. I've worked a lot in business development and sales, and the way that I've grown businesses for other people is by establishing groups of introducers, right? It's finding people that can actually do that sales job for me, exactly as I've done with Screen Skills, with Access VFX. It's riding the coattails and letting somebody else do the sales. Somebody else can do the sales and marketing, and then I effectively become the service that they're marketing. And that's kind of that's worked really well for me in the past for other people, of course, but also I've then implemented that in the way that I work. I think as a consequence of that coattail riding, if you like, I've secured a number of clients who just keep using my services, and as a result of that, they then recommend me to their own supply chains, to their own clients. I've got a reasonable presence on LinkedIn. I think I'm just under 16,000 followers, something like that, and a lot of my work with individuals comes from my LinkedIn presence, so that's useful. When I'm delivering my careers training, I always say actually that there are 3 things which turned my life as a consultant around. LinkedIn is the first one, right? So when I think back to me 8 years ago when I was really starting out my practice, I did a slow traverse. I did a kind of a I'm not going to say risk-free, but I did a risk assessment before I went completely self-employed in terms of consulting. And I found a part-time job within the creative industries as a head of L&D, which would enable me then to free up 2.5 days a week for me to work on my private practice. But my part-time work, that I was being paid for, was paying my bills. And it gave me a little bit of scope outside of that to start building up that framework. And I slowly kind of moved over to being completely self-employed. But LinkedIn enabled me to do that, to really kind of build that visibility on LinkedIn. And it was just consistency. I don't have a premium membership. I don't think you have to. If you know how to use the platform properly, you don't need to pay 60 odd pounds. I don't know what that is in dollars, but I think it's 60 quid a month here in the UK. You don't need to do it. And I think in that first year, I was bringing in, on average, between 3 and 5 new clients a month just through LinkedIn presence. So that really worked for me. And in fact, I include LinkedIn training as part of my employability programs, right? My employability programs and my training for freelancers includes how to use LinkedIn effectively to pull in new contracts. The other thing that I talk about all the time is the use of SMART goals. So that's helped me kind of turn my practice around. It allows me to have a get stuff done formula. I'm very productive. And I think the reason that I'm as busy as I am is because I'm as busy as I am. I don't know if that makes sense, but I kind of know what that means. Using SMART both as a goal setting tool, but also to assess which contracts are worthwhile for me and which I should walk away from has been really good for me. And the last thing that's really helped me to grow the practice has been a recent development, which is using AI as a strategic partner, actually. I am not an advocate of generative AI, can I just put out there? I work in the creative industry, so you can understand that, right? But this is the caveat. I do use premium ChatGPT as a co-pilot, right? Probably because I'm a writer and a trainer, it's made me a really good prompt engineer, which has, again, made me massively productive. And I can get the R&D and the outline aspects of a training program put together in probably 10% of the time that I used to 2 years ago. So that's been massively helpful. And it's enabled me to then switch some of my attention that would have been spent on that R&D stuff to kind of building relationships and building up that network. I am asked to come and speak occasionally. I still haven't got that elusive TED talk under my belt. I'm still waiting for that to happen. But I do get asked to come and speak quite often. It will be in panels, for example, industry panels about careers or employability. And sometimes I get asked to come and deliver short training programs in larger conferences. Last year I was asked to go along to a trade union conference, for example, and deliver an hour and a half session to 300 delegates on how to build up their membership. So, you know, I get asked to come along and do things like that, which is they're helpful, and they've worked really well as well in terms of continuing to build up my following. And I think it's just about diversifying, right? So you just got to diversify where you are and make sure that you're visible in every corner where the people that you want to work with and for are also likely to be. That I feel like I've nailed it. I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but yeah, it feels like I'm there.
How are you gonna secure that TED Talk?
TikTok.
TED Talk.
Oh, TED Talk. Do you know? I don't know. And you know what I should do? I should ask AI, shouldn't I? I should ask AI.
Maybe you should.
Yeah, maybe I should. That's going to be my next prompt. I'm going to ask it to secure a strategy for me on how I can secure an option of a TED Talk. Yeah, that's going to be that. Yeah, you can catch up with me on that. I'll tell you how that goes.
If you figure it out, let us know, and that will be for sure an episode that will be of interest for many people. But cool, makes sense. Well, being in a place where you don't need new leads, you don't need new clients is definitely a good space to be in. Because there are people who I know there are people listening to this show who are like, they want to grow, right? So there is the business coming from referrals, and that makes sense. I think as a consultant, B2B coach, you need to get referrals. Otherwise, that means that you're probably not doing as good a job as you should.
Yeah.
But once you really want to start scaling and growing, recruiting talents, like building a firm, you need to plug in an acquisition channel that works typically. Tell us a bit more about how you made LinkedIn work for you. Like, I understand right now it's not something you want to do anymore, Kate, because you have the people that you need to work with. But for people listening to us who want to learn like maybe a new way to grow or what has worked for you, can you tell us a bit more about that? How you made LinkedIn work for you?
Yeah, so it's very much about presence, right, and visibility. So there's a number of things that I've done, which I've taught through my the sessions that I deliver, on how you can do the same yourselves. And the one thing, LinkedIn it's search engine optimized, right? So the first thing is making sure that your profile is visible to as many people as possible who are likely to be using your services. So that means that you're covering all of the keywords, phrases, skills, attributes, projects, all of the stuff that somebody is likely to put into the search bar that they are looking for, that you can provide, needs to be within the confines of your profile somewhere. That doesn't mean that you stick it all in the 2,000 plus characters of your About Me section. It means that it's kind of layered within the profile. I think we can all admit that none of us ever goes onto somebody's LinkedIn profile and reads every word of somebody's LinkedIn profile. No, we're not going to do that, right? But what we do by layering up our profile is that we're enabling the search engine to then find the most critical information when somebody's looking for it. So that's the first thing, is making sure that your profile is robust. and it's covering everything that it should do. The next thing is to connect, right? You don't know who you don't know. And it might be that somebody from a really left of field industry is asking to connect with you, and you're not entirely sure where there might be value, but you have to remember when you connect with them, what you're effectively doing is you're connecting with their network. So you don't know who they know, right? So for me, I've connected with pretty much anybody who asks to connect with me. I do. If I discover they're a bot, if they become a pest, I just get rid of them. It's as simple as that. But obviously that then grows your visibility. I would definitely go down the route of looking at groups. So I joined a significant amount of business networks on LinkedIn. So it's a little bit like joining channels on Discord, right? So you join specific groups of individuals on LinkedIn. The groups section is broken down into industry, into types and levels of profession, and all of that kind of stuff. So if you were, so for me as a consultant working across kind of workforce enhancement and all this kind of stuff and careers, I went into a lot of the more local business pages where there were likely to be businesses looking to engage somebody like me. There's no point in me going onto a group which is full of other consultants, because all we're going to be doing is talking about, probably whining about how difficult it is to be a consultant, or, maybe sharing some best practice. So it's nice. It's a nice networking space, but that's not going to get you more work. More work is going to come from where you're able to pick up on somebody posting in one of those groups that they're having an absolute nightmare with their staff, that they're always in conflict with each other, or they've got a horrendous sickness record, and people are leaving left, right and centre because Joe in the purchase order department's a right arsehole and nobody knows how to manage them, right? So those are the rooms that you want to be in if you're somebody like me, because then you can come in and solve the problem for them and say, look, do you want to come offline and just have a quick chat about that issue that you're having? Because I can probably provide you with a little bit of advice. And then that comes into that kind of, what's the value added stuff? And it might be that I would get something like that off of LinkedIn. I would pull them offline. They'd go, yeah, okay. And then there'd be that whole, how much is this going to cost me? And I'd say, do you know what? We'll do a half-hour scoping call, which is completely free. This is just so that I can understand the issue that you've got and provide you with a little bit of advice on what you might want to do next. And then I'll just follow up with an email giving you a few options on how, if you wanted some further support, how I can help you with that. And then I would follow up. And 9 times out of 10, I would get work out of it that way. So that's just a couple of options. On top of that, of course, you need to be posting content that your potential clients are interested in reading, that you're providing a service to them. It should feel like you're giving people things for free from your practice, because then what they see is you are the expert in your field. They know about this stuff. They've done this before. They've provided me with like little breadcrumbs of information that I need to build on to do better when I'm working with my people. It's that kind of stuff, really.
I like that. Kate, you're flying in your business. It's amazing. And
knackered.
I need a holiday. Yeah, for sure. So that's another topic. But I genuinely mean it. So we talk with a lot of people who want to obviously grow, go to the next level, scale. I think very few people are able to also be like, yeah, that's where I wanted to be, and I'm fine with that. And I like the clients I work with, and I'm fine where I'm at. And in those cases, you've won. So that's amazing. And I think this should be what every B2B coach and consultant aspire to at some point. So let me ask you this. What's one challenge for you though? Which wouldn't be in growing, right? Because you're past that. What's that one challenge that, once you crack, you can, not take the whole thing to the next level, but maybe take a holiday, or what's that one thing for you?
Gosh, I'll tell you, and this is the biggest bugbear, and I've not yet got the solution. I'm sure somebody from, who's probably listening will have the solution for this. And I've been racking my brains about it. I've spoken to other consultants about it. And the issue that I've got is that Lander Consulting is me, right? It's Kate. That's it. I have the same 24 hours in a day that everyone else does. And ultimately, I've become a victim of my own success, which sounds like an awful thing to say. So how privileged is that? Oh, my God, I'm so entitled. But no, that I've become a victim of my own success. My brand means that when people book Lander Consulting, they are booking me. They don't want anyone else. They want me, which is lovely. You know, I mean, what does that do for an ego? God, right? It's lovely. But I am limited by my own time and energy. So, I mean, in an ideal world, I'd like to be able to pull upon the expertise of my network. And I have a broad network. I've got some fantastic associates that work with me when I need them to usually support a project that I'm working on, that I've been employed to do. And then I'll bring in my network to support me. What would be the perfect scenario for me would be that I could pull on the expertise of that network, of the associates that work with me, by kind of passing work out, so that, you know, when a new acquisition, new piece of work comes in, they say, right, we want to hire Lander Consulting, not Kate Lander, but Lander Consulting to do this piece of work. Can you do it? And I can go, yeah, absolutely. And I can, you know, kind of allocate that piece of work to somebody else. For me, in terms of scaling, that would enable me then to take a commission for that, but also it frees up my time. And it means that I haven't got to be all things to everyone. I can, you know, it alleviates some of the stress. It's a tricky place to be in, because, you know, it's nice for people, and it's brilliant for me that people want to come and they want to hire me and they want me to be their consultant. But I have to say no to people. I don't want to say no to people, but I have to, just because I don't have the capacity. I'm in my 50s, right? I know it's hard to believe, but I am. And over the next kind of 5 to 6 years, I'd like to be at a point where I can start to ease away from spending 50, 60 hours upwards a week in the business, to, you know, kind of splitting that time between the business and my creative pursuits, which, you know, are equally as important to me. They don't earn me anywhere near as much money, but it'd be really nice for me to be able to go back down to being just purely creative and start creating stuff and, you know, writing my novels and doing all of that kind of stuff, which at the moment, the light at the end of the tunnel is not that, it's not there yet, because everyone's knocking on the door saying, Kate Lander, can you do this for me? So that's the breaking point, I guess, that you're asking about. That's that, you know, if there was one thing that I wish I could do, it would be that. It would be moving the business or my practice away from it being Kate Lander and it being more, this is the stuff that we can deliver, not just me.
Mm-hmm. Kate Lander, ladies and gentlemen. Kate, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
They can either hit me up on LinkedIn, because I'm all about making those connections on LinkedIn, so please do. And I'm sure you'll share my LinkedIn profile. Or otherwise, you can check me out on my webpage, which is www.landerconsulting.co.uk.
We'll indeed put all the links in the description. I can say one thing for sure is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn, Kate. Me. I've just added it.
That'll do.
Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time. How